Considered by many to be the most difficult mission to Ninja 5 in casual play, the infamous Mission 16 is essentially the Tenchu Z equivalent to an auto-scroller. However, with the liberal application of speedrun strats, it ends up being one of the easier levels in the run. Despite the copious item usage in this mission, we don't equip any before the mission starts, so go ahead and jump in without a shopping trip. Run north and roll. I'll jump across the gap, then run up and off the apex of the roof. Hard land and shatter your ankles, then shake it off by running to the right and across the main street. Hang a left behind the buildings and continue north. As you near the side street, roll around the building and next to the lamp. Wait for the archer to begin turning, then draw the sword and roll into the main street. As Echigoya passes the archer, dash SK the archer. Sheath the sword, roll over to the archer, and grab the bow, then run after Echigoya while swapping to the bow. Once atop the hill, aim the bow at the lamp and fire it just before Echigoya begins to stumble to a stop. Stand in the middle of the street and wait for Echigoya to round the corner. As you get a yellow meter, climb up to the rooftops to the left. Run north and L jump across the alley to the higher rooftop, then ready another bow shot facing the west fence. When Echigoya enters view, fire the arrow and roll into the lower rooftop and down to the ground. Position behind the alley guard and draw the sword, then roll around to his south-facing side. Wait for the street guard's shadow to come into view, and L-jump to aerial SK as he becomes visible, chaining into the consecutive SK on the alley guard. Run east to the end of the raised terrain, then L-jump and hard land into the northwest corner of the pool. Immediately L-jump back out and run over to grab the Shuriken box. Retrace your steps, equipping the Shuriken on the way. Run towards the topside entryway, rolling as you near it. Sheath the sword and wait for the Tomokichi to turn. Once he does, rush him and draw the sword, getting a back SK. Cancel the SK and line up for a dash SK on the spear guard, then run back towards the Tomokichi. As you wait for the vanish item to settle on the ground, sheath the sword. Grab the vanish and promptly roll northwest. Wait for Echigoya to turn, then run after him. Chuck the shuriken at the wall behind him to spook him, then roll behind and to his right. Then retrieve the shuriken and climb onto the east building, re-equipping the shuriken. Aim and throw the shuriken in front and to the side of Echigoya, then run south to the edge of the building. Dash into R-jump off the building, then retrieve the shuriken again. As he's stumbling out of blue meter, throw the shuriken at the west end of the white building. Stay out of Echigoya's sightlines and wait for the mission to conclude. Look for sub 220 times in this mission. The core mechanism used in this mission is spooking Echigoya into a blue lantern state, causing him to run along his preset route instead of his typical stroll. This is done with the tactical use of sound-based mechanics, dash SK on key guards, using projectiles on terrain or walls, and possibly the most interesting, loud movement. These instances of harassing Echigoya are the primary breakpoints in the mission, with no real way to speed up the process between them. The key here is to focus on being prepared to trigger each blue meter as soon as possible. Great care needs to be taken around Echigoya while he's in a blue meter state. If spotted by Echigoya, or if you strike him with an item, the mission immediately ends in a failure, killing your run without any sort of recourse. While his detection abilities in non-alerted states are average at best, the same cannot be said for when he's on alert. Once alerted, his vision becomes eagle-esque, and his visual detection cone increases to roughly 180 degrees. This is why the route is quite insistent on staying behind Echigoya's vision cone by waiting for him to turn corners before emerging from cover and positioning well out of sight lines while using items. Conveniently, we are able to scavenge all of the items needed to expedite Echigoya cycles from within the district itself. The downside is that we're forced to use bows, which are rather slow to use in Tenchu Z. The item button will draw the bow and fire the arrow, making the timing of the shot a bit tricky. The arrow itself is a surprisingly slow projectile with significant drop-off, so consideration of both the bow draw and the arrow's flight time is necessary to pre-fire consistently. It's something that you'll need to get a feel for, as it's a clunky system. Shuriken, in contrast, have virtually no windup and very little drop-off to them, so they're much faster and easier to use. It's possible to use Shuriken in place of all of the arrow shots, since every new save file starts with 5 Shuriken, but this requires an extra trip to the shopping shack. This is incredibly slow due to the languid combination of going out of your way to go to the shack and the frustrating amount of menu lag found within. With close to optimal menuing, which can be a tall order, you're taking a solid 6.5 second time loss right off the hop. This is a much greater loss than even mediocre arrow shots. There's a seemingly inconsequential movement that is anything but. After firing the arrow to move him along, we stand in the street and strafe left, following Echigoya as he moves down the street without moving within his 180-degree danger zone. Before he completely moves out of view, we trigger a yellow meter from a civilian to the right, then proceed up to the rooftops. By intentionally triggering the yellow lantern, the civilian breaks her cycle and momentarily stops, then slowly starts to move towards you. This maintains the distance between you and her, allowing you to ascend to the rooftops before she can close the gap enough to detect you. Rather counterintuitively, this is crucial to the strat. If you were to remain crouched until Echigoya rounds the corner, then uncrouch to hop up, you'll be outright detected by this civilian. Because her detection abilities are fairly poor, she won't see you crouched in the street and will continue along her cycle. She would then be close enough to immediately detect you as you jump up. As mentioned earlier, Shuriken are very quick to use, which is why I don't even bother using the aiming reticle on the first throw. Feel free to use it if you find it easier to do so. It doesn't make a meaningful difference either way, with the reticle usage simply requiring a few extra clicks of the right stick. Similar to the first arrow shot, the first Shuriken throw has a pesky civilian that can detect you if you're too impatient. Fortunately, no special movement is required to outwit this one. Simply observe his shadow, and don't cross the gap past the stairs until he begins to turn around. The various timings and setups in this mission have fairly loosey-goosey tolerances. While the strats generally fail if done too early, there's very little consequence to doing them slightly late, aside from the corresponding time loss. Some aspects are even more lenient. Here's an instance in which I couldn't find the Shuriken after the first throw, then missed the second throw, requiring a backup bow shot. Despite the incredibly scuffed execution here, I still finished the mission with a 219.2. This is why Mission 16 is actually one of the easier levels in the run. Most other missions involve strats that have razor-thin margins and require very tight execution tolerances. The most important aspect for completing this mission quickly, oddly enough, is to not rush the strat. Take a relaxed and measured approach, and the pieces will fall into place.
のくらいにしておいてやる。はっ、このくらいにしておいてやる。今日はこのわしに何の恨みがあるんじゃ。